Guys, this is Dreads by Dotie. This video is specifically for my starter lock people. This is the do's and don'ts, the maintenance tips, and what to expect from your journey. Stay tuned. So just to start it off, I like to typically tell my clients the history of locks. From my research, locks was originated in Africa, and locks were typically used as a symbol of status, something similar to what Americans should treat the soldiers like today. If you typically had locks in Africa, that means you were a warrior or a hunter of some sort that went and hunted for your tribe and things like that. The reason why the word dreads came about is because other ethnicities started wearing them. For example, when Vikings wore dreads, they would say when they went to go terrorize the other villages and things like that, the only thing that people will remember is that their head was dreadful. 2018, I personally would like for you to use whatever term best fits your journey, but I would like to tell people that because they do need to know the background of locks, or just the ancestry of whatever you decide to go for. So the method to start, there are two methods to start for typically overly curly hair. For the first method that I use a comb coil method. With a comb coil, essentially I use a wet spray solution and spray that on before I comb coil the hair. Comb coil is I get a comb and then I twist your hair like this to make your natural curl pattern go into a coil pattern. So the next form is interlocking. With interlocking is typically done on dry hair. It's typically done with a crochet hook of some sort, and it makes your hair knot up and super tight throughout your entire lock strand. The benefits of both is, well, with palm rolling gets you a super neat, consistent look, and interlocking can also give you a super neat, consistent look. However, the major difference is palm rolling can last you 3 to 4 weeks. Interlocking can last you up to 2 to 3 months depending on your hair curl pattern. For my straight hair clients, I do a back combing crochet method, and with that method, I typically only do that on straight hair because it forces a dreadlock on their hair because they have absolutely no curl pattern. Also, not having your ends trimmed for my overly curly people can actually benefit you because the phases of locking is baby, adolescent, and adult phase. From the baby phase, it's a budding phase. With the budding phase, if I have a crochet lock right here that I made. It's not from anyone's hair. It's from a beauty supply store, the pre-packaged hair. Budding starts at the tip of your hair. So with budding, when you have your afro hair or your overly curly hair, when you put your finger through it and you put it down, once it starts doing that, that means it's budding. This is the beginning phase of your locks. When it typically becomes the adolescent phase goes when your hair starts maturing from the bottom up. And from the bottom up, it eventually starts maturing into the adult phase. As the budding and adolescence and maturing phase, the adult phase begins, that's when you'll notice your hair begins to, how do I say this? There's less fuzz. It gives you that mature dreadlock that you see typically with everyone who's had their hair for a year, 2 years, and on up. So when starting your locks, it's best to consult a professional because you need to understand your texture. You need to understand whether you have straight hair, wavy hair, curly hair, or overly curly hair. They're typically categorized as 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, ABCs, but just go consult your professional if you're not sure what that means. So when starting your hair, if you have typically curly to overly curly hair, you can use the comb coil method. If you have wavy to straight hair, you can use the back comb and crochet method. The method that I use for primarily my clients are the comb coil method. With the comb coil method, you get a comb, you use the curl pattern of the overly curly hair, and you just make it into a spiral-like form. For my clients who have wavy hair to straight hair, I typically back comb and then crochet their hair, and I force a dreadlock into their hair. With the overly curly hair texture, it can range anywhere from 3 months to 9 months or almost a year for their hair to completely mature. And for my straight hair clients, it can range from 7 months to almost 2 years for the hair to completely mature. How you can tell it's a fully mature dreadlock is it's smooth, it's consistent, it's non-frizzy, and it's hard in the center. That's eventually what the goal is to get to have a fully mature dreadlock. Not having your ends trimmed for my overly curly hair textures can actually be beneficial, because that's when we start going into the phases of locking. Budding typically comes in phases for locking. With locking, it's a baby phase, adolescent phase, and a adult phase. With the baby phase typically has the beginning of the bud. Budding typically starts, if this is connected to your roots right here, this is gonna be your tip. Baby phases typically start down here at the bottom. When people look at their roots and they're like, oh, my hair is not locking, your hair is not locking, because that's always the last thing to lock. That's why you have to constantly get maintenance to make it look neat again. So when looking at the bottom, once your hair starts doing this, that is the beginning of your dreadlock. And so once it starts at the bottom, it starts maturing all the way up. And then adolescent phase is when it's about halfway locked up, and then that's when people can typically start tipping or coloring the tips of their hair, the blonde, or any colors like that. And then eventually when it gets all the way up to the top, that's when it has become a fully mature dreadlock. Type of maintenance for locking your hair, there are two main types of maintenances for the overly curly textures. For the overly curly textures, it is palm roll maintenance and it's interlocking maintenance. What determines what you need to do is strictly depending on you or the recommendation of your professional. The first type of maintenance would be to palm roll your hair. That's what I like to do for my clients because it creates a consistent, congruent form of the lock that has less problems throughout the locking phase on weakening in the center or anything like that. And it also makes the fuzziness of the hair calm down. And so the benefit of that is it's congruent. The downfall of it is it only lasts up to 3 to 4 weeks, and you have to get it maintained every 3 to 4 weeks. The other type of maintenance is interlocking. With interlocking makes your hair tight and congruent as well. However, it's a little bit harder in the center and makes it a little bit more stiff, and the benefit of it is you only have to get it maintained every 2 to 3 months, and you can shampoo as much as you like without having to get it maintained in between. Now the downfall is it does not really focus on the fuzziness. The reason it doesn't is because interlocking typically focuses on the root of the dreadlock. So when you're getting your hair interlocked, it goes through the center of the root, versus palm roll, I can palm roll all the way down to the tip, and that's what will make it smooth. What products I like to use for palm rolling, I typically like to use water-based products. I myself like to use the Talia Waji Tight Hold. The Talia Waji Tight Hold is what I found to be, it doesn't cause buildup. It keeps the hair pretty tight for the allotted time for 2 to 3 weeks, and it doesn't attract any buildup or lint or anything like that. For interlocking, I do it on dry, clean hair only, and it's very imperative that you're using products that are non-alcoholic based, no beeswax, no black gels, or just nothing that'll cause lint or dandruff in your hair. If you suspect that you have dandruff, psoriasis, dermatitis, or anything like that, I'd recommend that you contact your hairstylist or go to your local dermatologist for help. Locks are composed of 2 components, and that's typically scalp and hair. Just because you've oiled your scalp does not mean that your hair is moisturized and vice versa. They are 2 separate entities and should be treated as such. For your scalp, you should be using a loose base oil. I typically recommend avocado oil like such. This comes from, I believe it's Albertsons. but you can really find it at any cooking section. Just make sure it says 100% avocado oil. The reason I like to use avocado oil is because avocado oil has the lightness of coconut oil, but the potency of Jamaican castor oil. For overly curly hair textures, I typically like to use something that penetrates the hair follicle. A lot of people use coconut oil, but from what I've seen for the past couple of years I've been doing hair, is coconut oil does not penetrate the hair follicle like it needs to. So you can oil your scalp once, twice, 3 times a week, but you still feel as if your hair is dry. That's where avocado oil comes in, because it penetrates the hair follicle, but it's really light. And so some people use Jamaican castor oil, which is on the opposite end of the aspect and is very, very heavy. For Jamaican castor oil, it's heavy. To me, even when you mix it with things, it still attracts stuff because it's super sticky. So it attracts lint and dirt and a whole bunch of extra stuff that'll cause buildup in your hair. And for your hair, you should be misting something on your hair. I have some people that do it once a day. I have some people that do it once a week. It's strictly up to you. If you wake up in the morning and you feel as if your hair is a little dry, just get up and you can mist this. What misting consists of, typically I recommend Cream of Nature is a leave-in conditioner that you just shake up and you spray on your hair. This what keeps your hair moisturized, and a loose base oil is what keeps your scalp moisturized. There's also 2 beauty supply oils that I recommend. In my starter lock kit, I normally recommend a wild growth oil. With this oil, it's directly for your scalp and it should be used 2 to 3 times out the week. Make sure you're oiling your scalp only with this. It's very concentrated, so do not use much of it or you will cause buildup in your hair or cause your hair follicles to have a lot of buildup on them to where it's not allowing your hair to grow at a proper rate. If you're experiencing any type of dandruff or anything like that, I recommend a anti-itch oil. This is also for my sensitive hair clients. If you're ever itching or overly itching or anything like that, anti-itch oil from Dugrow. It's great. At the beauty supply, I think it's like maybe $7, and wild growth oil typically goes from $9 to $10. The main complaint that I get from the locking phase in the beginning is that the hair begins to itch. The hair begins to itch because of multiple reasons. The hair can either start itching because the hair is not used to being in a coil locking form, and so it can want you to itch it out and just be free again. Or sometimes you may have an underlying issue as if psoriasis, dermatitis, or anything like that. If you're uncertain, please make sure you contact your local hairstylist or make sure you go to your local dermatologist just to make sure we're not having any flakage that's going on during the process. We want to try to avoid flakage because if you flake and you don't get it resolved, once you start maintaining your hair, either that be with palm rolling or interlocking, the flakes will go down your lock and it will cause your hair to start flaking and looking white and dingy, and it can just be all bad. Getting into the other types of oil, there are many different types of oil. However, it's always encouraged to just make sure that you're using an oil that best fits your type of hair texture. How you know is your hair feels moisturized. If it feels moisturized to you and it's not causing any buildup, go for it. I would like to tell you the different types of oils that are typically used with locking and overly curly hair textures. With locking, it's coconut oil. These are moisturizing oils. It's coconut oil, jojoba oil, Jamaican castor oil, it's peppermint oil, it's tea tree oil. It's so many different types of oil. Look at the benefits, and like I said, if it feels moisturizing to you, use it. Now, a lot of people use more than 2 to 3 oils at a time. They'll be like, oh, I mixed this oil and that oil and that oil and that. You're mixing too many oils. Just use 2 to 3 oils. Anything else is getting excessive and you're wasting your money. So oils are also categorized into moisturizing oils and healing oils. Healing oils are oils that I recommend only for healing purposes and not moisturizing. Don't use these oils every day. By the way, you should only be oiling your scalp 2 to 3 times out the week only. This is scalp only. So the healing oils are tea tree and peppermint oil. Tea tree and peppermint oils are oils that I recommend to treat dandruff or also help with psoriasis, dermatitis, or anything like that. Like I said, if you're unfamiliar with what you have, just because it's flakes in your hair, that necessarily doesn't mean it's dandruff. If you're not sure, contact your local hairstylist or go see your local dermatologist. Here are the do's and don'ts of locking your hair 101. According to me, like I said, this should be based off your local hairstylist or dermatologist, but this is what I recommend. For the do's and don'ts, like I said, different types of oils. Everybody's using like 15 different types of oils to put in one bottle because it does this. No, you're really just wasting your money and doing overly excessive stuff that's not needed. Apple cider vinegar rinses. Apple cider vinegar rinses are great. I love them. However, a lot of people do them excessively. Excessively is more than every 3 months. A lot of people say they use apple cider vinegar rinses every time they shampoo. You're overly drying your hair. When overly drying your hair out, meaning removing the oils, that means you're going to break off your hair and cause damage and things like that. And we don't want to do that. We want to try to keep as much moisture in the dreadlock as possible. So I recommend that you use apple cider vinegar rinses once every 4 to 5 months, just to remove the dirt and impurities out of your hair, but doing it overly excessive is not required. Do not switch locticians. If you stick with your uncle, sister, baby, cousin, sister, nephew, niece, stick with that person. I get a lot of clients that come to me and they've tried 12 other different people and they're wondering why their hair is not locking. Your hair is not locking because you have so many people in your hair. Just stick to one person. Even if that person is, you know, you feel like they're doing it, if they're doing it wrong, or you feel like they're doing it wrong, or you feel like, you know, it's causing some extra damage or anything like that, of course switch, but make sure you're doing your research on that person before you switch. It's a lot of regimens that each loctician gets out, and so if you go to person A and they have 3 regimens, you go to person B and they have like 6 regimens, you go to person C, they have 1 regimen. That's no, it's too much. It's locking. The less you do to your hair, the more beneficial it is for your hair, and the less you'll have manipulation and less cause of breakage. Do not use buildup prone products. Like I said, no beeswax, no gels, no alcoholic based anythings, no. My mama makes this in her house and it consists of egg, avocado, honey mustard, mayo, ketchup, and it makes my hair last longer. That's nasty. I've gotten ringworms from people who've put in a lot of stuff in their hair and they think it's really helping, but you're really having a big petri dish in your hair. Stop it. How often you should shampoo your hair. I recommend that you shampoo your hair once a month. No more than 2 weeks in between. The more you shampoo your hair, like I said, that goes with that whole over drying your hair. You want to keep as much moisture in your hair as possible. Even if you're working out, I would say get a cleaning mist in between versus washing your hair every time, because when you wash your hair and you don't get it and you only get it maintenance once out of the month, you'll be doing too much if you're overly washing it and not getting it maintained as much. What you should be shampooing it with, you should always have a cleansing shampoo. I use the Design Essentials brand. They have an oat and henna cleanser that removes all the dirt and impurities, and then I go back with the avocado and almond oil moisturizing shampoo to replenish the moisture that has been taken out from the cleansing shampoo, and then I go with a deep conditioning rosemary and mint conditioner, and it is great. It gives you a tingly feeling and your hair is definitely moisturized after you finish. In the beginning, your locks will not look like what you've imagined. We all have to go through the phases of locking. Some people have less fuzziness, some people lock faster, some people have a really hard time to lock. However, do not base your journey off of someone else's journey. I've had a lot of people that'll say, oh, I locked my hair in a month. I locked my hair with instant locking. I locked my hair with, you know, just different things like that. Your journey is your journey. Make it personable, make it enjoyable. Don't cringe over the sight of your phases that you have to go through. Some phases are quite messier than others, but enjoy your journey. Don't base it off anyone else's journey and what they've gone through. So, we have reached the end of the video. If you have not listened to anything else I have said for your entire starter lock video, these are the main 3 things I need you to focus and listen in on. The 3, 2, 1s of maintenance. Get your hair done every 3 to 4 weeks if you're doing the palm rolling method. This will ensure that everything is going smooth, everything's staying in line with the parts, and everything is being consistent. Number 2 is oil your scalp once to twice a week with your recommended oil from your loctician or your dermatologist. Oiling, make sure you're not overly oiling, because if you're overly oiling, you can cause your hair follicles to clog up, and that will permit your hair to not grow as fast as it could. And make sure you're tying your hair down every single night while you're oiling your hair. This also includes with the mist regimen. With the mist that I was talking about earlier, you can mist, your locks are composed of 2 components, scalp and hair. Just because you've oiled your scalp does not mean that your hair is moisturized, and vice versa. Oiling your scalp with the loose base oil, if you need to rewind, I go over the loose base oils that I recommend. And then a light mist, a light conditioning mist, which a leave-in conditioner, I use the Cream of Nature. Please make sure you're using that as needed. You cannot overdo on the mist, however you can overdo on the oil. And number 1, only shampoo your hair once out of the month, and that should be during the first couple of months. As you mature into the adult locking phase, that's when you can wash your hair or shampoo your hair more often. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. I have Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, all of that, or you can just simply text me 214-460-3445, and me or my assistant will be more than happy to help you. Thanks, you guys. Congratulations on starting your locks, and I will see you soon. Bye.